Hello, unstoppable real estate investors. I'm Rayanna Starr with the Unstoppable Real Estate Investor Member Spotlight on Friday at noons in our group, every week in our group, Friday at noon Eastern. And I spotlight a member or a client every Friday. On Wednesdays, we do it at noon Eastern, and that's the top 5%ers, people who are rock stars in the industry. They've made it. And then on Fridays, it's talking about how the struggle is real and just the journey that people are on as real estate investors and who are succeeding at it, but maybe still not where they want to be necessarily, but they've got goals and just sharing what they're doing, what they're focusing on. And Lionel is a client of mine, Lionel and his wife, Alex, and Alex is doing the mom and family thing right now, so she couldn't join us. They're dividing and conquering as a partnership should. And so Lionel, welcome to the podcast. It's good to have you here.
Thank you, Rihanna, for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's nice to see you. And hey, I'm just curious, share with people what you were doing before you got into real estate investing.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a long-term self-employed entrepreneur. Started off firing my boss back in 2008, and been doing IT. So my background is in IT. Went to school for that for a quick 2 years. Interned for a while. Worked at a really prestigious company for a quick 2 to 3 years. Learned everything I could, and then quit and started doing my own thing. And so I've been in the IT field for the last 12 plus years, and found real estate about 2017, and the rest is history.
So tell us about your real estate investment history since 2017. What have you been doing?
Yeah, so it's been interesting, to say the least. The struggle is real. It's been good. Has its ups and downs. Coming from the self-employment type mindset and world, everything is a learning experience, and I've just kind of been learning, teaching myself through the ropes, so it's great to now have a mentor, to someone to guide me in the right directions. But it's been kind of where I stumbled on it on accident, looking to help out a cousin of mine get into some houses for people with trachs. Actually, he said he needed a home. I knew that real estate was a good thing to build wealth, and so I ended up buying my first property, which was a duplex, but ended up being a triplex because there were some mother-in-law quarters in the back. And when that didn't pan out with me and my cousin, I ended up turning into an Airbnb, which amazingly cash flowed very well back in 2017 when the Airbnb was still pretty hot in LA.
And now what are you doing with that triplex?
So so funny enough, come full circle, I'm actually getting ready to sell it. It's cash flowed for me pretty well through the Airbnb times, and then LA made some changes to their short-term rental laws, and I had to turn that into a regular rental, which it still cash flowed very well. But having some meetings with my CPAs and stuff, it seems to be a good time to sell it to avoid like capital gains tax, and now we're going to sell it. And of course, being in the LA market, it's appreciated quite a bit, and now we can walk away with those profits and do some other stuff that we've been working on.
Yeah, and aren't you due to close on that like any minute?
Any minute, yeah. So everything's approved and ready to go. We just finished our negotiations as far as what the buyer wants and whatnot. And hopefully, let's see, next week will be our close date.
Do you guys have a date now?
No, we're still waiting on that close date, but I just got off the phone with the title and escrow company this morning, and they said everything's good. They're just waiting on one document, and they'll have a date for us.
Awesome. Right on. One document from who?
I think it's actually their agent. So it's something they have to sign. They're just waiting.
Okay. All right. Yay. I'm excited.
Yeah.
And then what? Now what? And you also have another rental in LA, and you used to live there and now you live in Indiana, right?
Yeah, so I took the method of kind of house hacking and had that property, and then moved into another property, lived in it, and then we moved again. And so that property, funny enough, in that sliver of a area in Los Angeles, you can still Airbnb. So I took that approach, Airbnb that. And now I'm turning that into a rental because I'm going to be expanding on it and building ADU in the back, which will tremendously increase the value. And then we'll probably end up selling that one down the line too. But yeah, that one's doing pretty well as well.
And how are you doing on the permits on that? What, because I know those have been dragging out. How's the progress on those?
Yeah, with LA, it can take some time. It's one of those, you got to make sure you get ahead of everything. So the
California,
permits,
not just LA.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
A lot of red tape in California.
yeah.
But so we're probably about 3/4 the way on those permits. There's a couple documents that I actually had to help and jump in and push to get done. You got to get fire safety tests and water pressure tests and all kinds of interesting things that you got to get done. So yeah, we're about 3/4 done. We're gonna have those, I'm hoping by January, just in next month. And then yeah, and then we can start the work and start putting that ADU together.
Yeah, and this is an important point that I want to emphasize for everyone. Know your market. Like you really need to know what's going on in your market because I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I used to live in San Diego. I'm a California girl. And a permit takes like a nanosecond here and it costs like $25. It's so easy to get a building permit and what stopped the project for me, I was going to build a guest house in my backyard, was I couldn't expand my septic system. So I bought the piece of land that wrapped around my lot, and now I'm going to rezone and add half an acre to my current lot and then have another acre and see if that's going to change and I can still build a guest house on my land and expand that septic system. And then I want to build either one or two little cottages kind of in the woods to Airbnb or long-term rentals. So you really do have to pay attention. You can't be naive and just jump into deals, ignorantly because you don't know. I have heard so many stories of people, the hassles they've gone through. I was just talking to some neighbors of mine who are in a little condo community. There's a conveyance on that land, and there should be a silt pond on that land that evaporated years ago. And I said, hey, look, if I ever own that land, you guys can excavate that pond and put a pond there. So they're going to pay for a pond to go on my property, which everybody wins in that. But
Awesome.
they have told me some history in the area of a guy that bought a big piece of land, was going to develop it, and came up against all kinds of problems because of limitations from the county that were just cost prohibitive and just easements that he couldn't build over. It just, you really have to do your homework and pay attention to what's going on. Lionel has done that. I want you to talk a little bit about the restrictions on Airbnbs in LA, because you may think, oh yeah, I want to do short-term rentals because vacation rentals, you make more money on them than you do long-term rentals if you're in the right market. Now we're starting to hit saturation point here.
Yeah.
So then you have to know what's other strategies like midterm, corporate rentals or long-term rentals, or there's so many options, but you got to know what the zoning is, what the rules and the laws are. So tell us a little bit about what changed in LA with regard to Airbnb, Lionel.
Yeah, so it was chaotic, as you can imagine. A lot of people were actually, I feel really bad for a lot of seniors who were actually doing Airbnbs out there. I used to go to the meetings down at the city hall, and I'd see a lot of elderly people who were doing Airbnbs to kind of supplement, because it's expensive to live in LA. They hit us with what's called a short-term rental ordinance, and it removed basically any area that is rent control, which is most of LA. You cannot Airbnb. You couldn't do it for 2.5 years. And now they're just bringing it back where you can do it, but it's very restrictive. You've got to have tax documents. You got to remit your own taxes to the county now that they're charging a tax. And it's only for so many days out of the year. So, I mean,
Who would approve that? I mean,
Crazy.
it's good. It's good for the economy. Who would
Oh,
pass a law like that? Why?
they wanted money. There were so many people making money. It was crazy. Like I remember when I first started where I was
Right,
at,
but they're restricting people from making money now.
they are, they are because I
Doesn't
mean
make sense.
it's so backwards. Yeah, it's so backwards. It's just I really couldn't explain it. It's you know, yeah,
You
it
were
increased
living in that
tourism.
house, right? And you lived in the triplex, so you did some house hacking and then moved up. So you lived in LA for a while. How long ago did you guys move to Indiana and why? And tell us about that transition.
Yeah, so Indiana was a great transition. We just moved. It's only been what is that? 8 months ago, which is recently. So I'm a new
Okay.
Hoosier. And that transition, was basically for me to burn the boats and really because I want to do real estate full time. That's and I am doing real estate full time now. And to make sure that I, left California because in California, I'm known as, the IT guy. I have a lot of clients all over, from Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, South Bay, all these areas. And so I get really wrapped up in that. But this way I was able to focus. Plus, we wanted a better environment for our kids, which for us, it just seemed to work out community
More
wise,
family values
family
area.
values. Yeah, with the,
How about cost of living? I bet that was a big change.
I couldn't even, that's a wrap. That's like, I'm still mind blown at how much the cost of living is here compared to LA. Gas is cheap. I mean, we got a house 3 times the size, 4 times the size of what we had for a quarter of the price, which is amazing. All my kids have
Yeah,
bedrooms.
you have reverse sticker shock, like the house I
Yeah.
bought here in Asheville. For
Hmm.
me to be able to get it anywhere in California would have cost me 5 or 6 times what I paid for it. And now I have a total of 2 acres because I just added that lot that was wrapping around. So if I were to pull all of that together, I mean, it would have been,
So
I
awesome.
wouldn't have been able to afford it in California.
Oh no. I mean, it's crazy. Like I tell when I now that I'm here, I network a lot with other investors and buyers, and I'm still getting used to the prices and stuff. And I just if I just tell them, hey, I just moved from a 500, $500,000 home that was 800 square feet. They're like, what? They just can't wrap their brain around
Yeah.
that. They're like, how do you live in it? Yeah, it was a 2 bedroom, 2 bath. Like how, and it's
Yeah,
just
I still have a lot of friends in California on the West Coast, and when I'm talking to other investors, and I just marvel. Like I say, wow, I have a 3,100 square foot home with a basement rental, and my mortgage costs me about easily $500 or $600 less a month than a 2 bedroom apartment in San Diego.
oh my gosh, yeah. That's crazy. Yep.
And I'm on half an acre, well, now 2 acres and a stream,
Hmm.
and just in a upper middle class neighborhood, lots of trees. It's amazing, what a difference. And it's so funny. I don't know if you felt this way living in California. When you're in California, you're like, California's so cool and badass. I love California. I love living here.
Oh man.
And then when you move, you heal from that. And
Yeah.
you're like, California isn't that great. I mean, it's expensive, it's crowded. Man,
Mhm.
wow, look at all this house I can own and this quality of life, and there's no congestion. And God, gas is like $1 less a gallon. And you know,
Oh
all
man.
of that.
Try yeah,
Yeah, it's
$8.
crazy. It's really crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the focus now for you, Lionel?
So now, my wife and I are working together, which is great because we have a lot more time on our hands being here. I've literally worked from this is my home office, it's a little junky, but this is my home office right now, that we're getting set up and everything. So, we're focusing on building a business, 100% on real estate, and it's 100% building wealth for our family, so we're doing what we love at the same time, creating long-term wealth for our kids and everything. And it's from here on
And
it's
how are you doing that specifically? What are
oh
what are you focusing on?
yeah, so well, thank you to you and me diving deep into a lot of the trainings that we've been doing. I've been looking at subject to. So I'm right now, anybody that's got subject to or creative finance sellers, we're picking those up, looking to purchase as many multifamily and single family on both ends. Right now we're
And is your focus passive income, or are you doing a little wholesaling and rehabbing as well?
So right now it's both. It's going to be like long-term, more passive income. I like that. That's kind of the route that I started to go in the beginning. And but I do want to create some active income. So as of right now, we're connected with buyers, and we're able to offload properties. So yeah, we're going to do some wholesaling for the next year, probably for the entire year, and then really dive more into acquisitions and having long-term passive income from buy and holds.
Yeah, and I know we talked about rehabs. You wanted to do about 5 or 6 rehabs a year, but right now with interest rates and just the economy where it's at, rehab isn't necessarily a good strategy right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, originally that was what,
building on that, you're doing wholesaling.
yeah,
Now, are
yeah.
you doing a direct outreach to seller, or are you gonna reach out to agents, or a little of both?
Kind of a hybrid. Yeah, we do. So I started, Alex is really good with the agent. She's been doing agent outreach for the last week, and I've talked to sellers. So we're doing kind of both. Just trying to see which is the better flow. It's nice to have agents. Agents are kind of a hack because if you get some good ones, they'll work for you, and bring you
Yeah,
everything.
like that guy you guys found in LA who's selling your
Oh,
triplex. Wow, what a godsend, huh? So
yeah.
you could still stay in that market with an agent like that, especially if you teach them subject to and seller financing and some of the other creative financing strategies. And you guys going to join sub two with Pace Morby at some point?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's the big
highly
thing too. Hmm.
Yeah, and then what about what's the next step from an operational level in your business? What do you feel like you need to do to be able to scale things and ramp them up?
So basically, right now it's just processes and systems, right?
Yeah.
Writing out what they call SOPs and putting together systems in place that we're just going to do on a daily basis. Expand out, hire a VA, to help with some of
From
the
Start Virtual.
start virtual. Yes, yes, thank you.
Start Virtual is a company that I'm a director of the Fearless Investor program over there, and we at Start Virtual we provide basically VAs that do all your marketing for you, and they're trained as real estate investment VAs. So if that's something you're curious about, please put a comment in the chat box down below, and I'll reach out to you, and I can share with you how that works. It's a very reasonable service, and it will also save you a lot of time and get you where you want to go faster. So just wanting to plug my company, Start Virtual. So we've got Kenneth Dumas, John Tesh, and a few others joining us. If you're with us, just send us some love in the comments and let us know you're with us. Say hi. And if you have any questions for me or Lionel, please don't be shy about putting those in the comment box. Usually these podcasts go about 30 minutes. Sometimes they can go as much as an hour, but Lionel is in Pace Morby's Elephant Challenge, and today's the last day. They were supposed to finish it last week. Something came up, so the last day is today. So I don't want to keep them away from that challenge for too much longer. So what's the goal for 2023 for you, Lionel?
Oh man, full speed ahead. I'm gonna launch the rocket. That's it. We're going to the moon. I mean, right now it's because we've got a lot of timing on our hands, and we can really focus on 100%. It's really just to build this as a business from the start, which is something that I wish I had done with the IT thing, but it was kind of meant to be to go through the processes to learn, and kind
And
of.
now, whenever you start any business, whether it's real estate or something else, you're learning a template. And there's a book that I had you guys read that I always recommend to people. Michael Gerber's The E-Myth Revisited. That he talks about this. That if you really want to build wealth, You can't get stuck in the role of technician, worker bee, even though that role is important in a business, because you do need to master your skills or you don't have a product or service. But then you got to shift into that managerial role where you shift out of being the worker bee into leading people. And that's a difficult shift for a lot of entrepreneurs. And that is what I coach real estate investors on, is how to make that shift from being the technician worker bee to learning how to develop processes and systems and lead people. And then ultimately, the real position of power and freedom is entrepreneur, where your processes and systems and people are doing it all for you. It doesn't mean it's completely hands off. You're more working on the business rather than in it. And it's if you do a good job as a leader, your people are going to take care of the business for you, especially if you have buy-in from them and they really feel like they are part of the team. And that's where you and Alex are right now, is just one, learning to work together as a partnership in the business and setting up some processes and systems and getting ready to build your team, right? Lionel, would you say that's where you guys are at right now?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely, it's funny because before we met you, Rihanna, it's kind of been a hobby, and my mind is going, no, okay, stop doing it as a hobby. This has to be a real thing. So now working with Rihanna, we're putting those processes and systems together, working hand in hand with our coach. And like I said, really taking it to the next level as of next year. So yeah.
Yeah. And so talk about challenges. I know you don't want to, but talk about a couple of challenges that you've had to overcome, because we all have them. No real estate investment journey is perfect and smooth. We have ups and downs, and those who are resilient and determined and persevere are the ones who survive. So talk about some of your recent challenges that you've overcome beautifully and with a lot of grace.
Yeah, there's always challenges in real estate, especially when if you're anyone like me, where you kind of learn the hard way, you're going to have probably more than most. It's always good to have a coach. The biggest thing I can always say is have a coach, because I didn't have one in the beginning. And so I just try this, try that. And I went through challenges, number one, like with the short-term rentals that I had gone through, which I lost a lot of cash flow on that just overnight. It was so fast how that happened. I'd tell you one of my biggest, I don't know if it was a mistake, it was a learning experience, was purchasing a home from someone who had a stolen title. It wasn't my fault. But these things can happen. You got to be aware of it. So you got to do your double, triple, quadruple due diligence on your seller. If you
How
need
did you handle that?
So it's going through that process was it was quite a learning experience for sure. So I basically, when I found out, the neighbors had informed me that this house is owned by an elderly couple, and they didn't, as far as we know, they didn't sell it. And so I ended up, first thing I did was I called Alex and I was like, we need an attorney quick to find out what's going on, because I was halfway through this rehab, when I'm finding out that this house wasn't sold. So this is actually, it's happening. Past 2020, it's kind of been a more common thing that you see around. So you got to be careful. That houses that are sitting vacant, this house was vacant for, I think it was about 15, 16 years. And it was an older couple. They just, for whatever reason, and you should never do that. Never have your house just sitting vacant, but they had their house sitting vacant.
What a waste of an asset.
Oh
Wow.
my God. Yeah. And it was beautiful. It was, a very nice home. They could have rented it out and made a nice, pretty penny, but they're kind of stubborn. They didn't want to do that. And so, when I found that out, I just, got my real estate attorney on it, and we worked. Now, the good thing is, one of the biggest piece of advice I can give everybody listening: always purchase title insurance, because I wouldn't even have anything. I wouldn't have anything I can do about it if I didn't have title insurance. Now we're in a process. I mean, it's been taking some time to get my money back and get, my rehab budget back. There was a hard money lender on it to get them paid back. But they wouldn't even talk to me if I didn't have title insurance. So
Wow.
yeah,
Big lesson there, and bummer. Wow, but good for you.
yeah,
Yeah, good for
yeah.
you to just go through the process. And I'm sorry that happened to you. Any other challenges you want to warn people about that you've stumbled on in your real estate investment journey?
Yeah, there's a few. Like I said, I kind of learned every lesson the hard way.
And look, he's still sitting here. He still owns real estate. He's still going for it.
Yeah.
You will survive. You're gonna make mistakes, and you can't give up. You're gonna learn from those mistakes. Every mistake you can have a lot of value if you look at it from the right perspective. All right, what am I learning from this? Like, he got how important having title insurance is. And it's a good thing you had it, because learning that that's important the hard way would be a bummer. But yeah, so what else? Tell us about a couple of your other challenges.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're still standing to tell the story. So
believe it.
that
Yeah,
says something.
it's not for the faint of heart. You got it's a little bit of tough skin to go through it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's funny. I had a meeting. Just share this real quick. I had a meeting with a private money guy, and he made a comment that I was like, this makes sense. Real estate is kind of like a self-correcting, business where you are going to fail in some places, but in other places you're going to be like, wow, that deal worked
Yeah,
out
I
great.
did so much better than I thought I was going to.
Exactly. That happens quite a bit and just kind of keeps you going. But another lesson I can definitely share is, make sure you vet contractors. I'm sure everybody has heard that term. I think was it Jerry Norton that says it.
Yeah, never give them money up front.
Oh yeah, you never do that. They I think it was Jerry Norton. Jerry Norton said that contractors are crooks, and he's like, well, don't, take offense to it, but yeah, a lot of them they'll promise a big game, but they may not deliver. If you give them too much money up front, they may disappear and do another job. So I think the biggest thing another big thing is to make sure you vet your contractors.
And develop a process around it. Like when I worked at Fortune Builders, I was a business coach over there. They developed this process called 6 critical documents, and it's just real fundamental stuff. Like, have a contract that they sign, make sure that they also carry insurance, and a waiver agreement, and just some other, a 1099 and some other documents, and to have a process in which you vet contractors. What are your criteria? What are the expectations? A payment schedule, and have that payment schedule be incentive based, meaning they have to agree to have a certain amount of work done each week in order to be paid at the end of that week. And if they don't, then they've got to complete that work, and then you pay them. So that's holding them accountable. When you develop a process for working with contractors, and you have very specific standards that you do not compromise, never compromise on them, never, no matter how great a relationship you have with your contractor. I was coaching a couple, this was many years ago. I mean, I've coached thousands of real estate investors. And this couple told me about, this is when I was at Fortune Builders, told me about this other Fortune builder who had experience. They were going to JV with him on an agreement, and he had been working with a contractor, the same contractor, for like 5 years. They had a great relationship, did many projects together. And there was this one deal where the contractor said, hey, could you pay me 50% up front just this one time? And the guy said, well, sure, we have a relationship. And he did. And the guy filed bankruptcy and never did the job.
Yeah.
So this is someone that this guy trusted, had done multiple projects with over a 5-year period. Never compromise on your criteria, your processes, your systems. They're there for a reason. Typically, they get developed either by you or someone else because of costly mistakes. So they're there to protect you. What else have you learned through trial and error and bumping up against stuff and making mistakes?
Yeah. So, one thing that's been great is when I was living in LA, I was kind of a virtual buyer here in Indiana. And I think that's great that you can do that nowadays, but I've run across, you got to be careful who your boots on the ground are, who you're connecting with in those states. Um, because I've picked up a couple properties that I was like, why did I buy in this area? Like so yeah,
Yeah.
definitely
Again, got to know your market.
know your market. Yeah, big
And
time.
what does that mean? Knowing your market? How does someone get to know their market? You're a real analytical guy, so you're a good guy to ask, like, how do you go about learning about your market?
So there's so many ways, but I think the more layers you have in that process, the better. So I mean, you start by number one, school districts, I think are pretty big, depending on what you're going after, if you're going after B2C type properties, you want to check the school district, check the income for the area is a big one. If you've got a lot of middle class people, and then also too, interviewing people, what I found is pretty good because one thing I didn't do when I was buying virtually that I would have done now is I didn't realize that, like, for example, folks in Indianapolis, they're so particular on what blocks they buy and what blocks they avoid. And it's like, you don't know that.
Actually, it's not just in Indianapolis. It's like that in all markets. People
Yeah,
have areas, hot zones and like no way zones. And you could have this really great community here and just going across a certain street, it's a completely different quality of neighborhood.
very
So that you learn that. Now, what about driving? Like if you're doing an area that you have access to, do you drive that area and eyeball it?
I wouldn't only drive it, I would probably hang out at night. That's when I was in LA, what I would do if I was looking at an area, I would drive it, but then I would go back when the sun's down, kind of just hang out, maybe eat some dinner in your car and just see, who's out and about, who's hanging around, who's circling, things like that. That's a great way to know your area because a lot of neighborhoods change at nighttime.
Yeah, and then also developing relationships with agents who can give you a lot of information. What about price points?
Oh yeah. So, it just depends on, price points vary depending on the area so much. Just depends on what you're looking at. But as far as like personal price points,
Yeah, like do you like seeing this neighborhood over here and really understanding the market is maybe 200 to 350 in this neighborhood.
right,
Go over here, it's 150 to 200.
right.
This is in a different school district, like
That's a great
learning
way.
that, like
Mhm.
I've even recommended when people are new that you get a wall map and even pin it. And because the visual of a map where you're drawing with marker around a designated area, you're putting pin flags in there on price points, you're, to like really like a research project, know your market.
Yeah.
Anything else that you look for?
Definitely price point. I look at population growth is another thing that I've always kind of been curious about. Because I heard horror stories of people investing in, certain markets where it's like they bought in this area and then people seem to like move, they leave, they don't want to, or for example, there may have been a lot of jobs there at one point and there's no jobs there anymore. So
Yeah, the timing. So the
timing,
timing
yeah.
and
Hmm.
really paying attention to the statistics and population and the demographics.
Yeah.
Now talking about your marketing, I was talking to a client of mine who pulled a list, 55 and over list, and was targeting a certain area, and he was doing a text campaign and he wasn't really getting much response from it. And we were troubleshooting that, because in some markets, like in Phoenix, cold calling isn't working as well as a texting campaign right now. More people are switching from a seller outreach campaign to an agent outreach campaign.
Yeah.
So it's knowing your market. But I was talking to this guy and we realized, oh, it's a 55 and over list. Of course, texting isn't working for them. They're much going to prefer talking to someone on the phone. Now, if you're in an area that's like Gen Z and millennials, they're never going to return your phone call. They want you to text them. So it's knowing your demographics is really important. Anything else?
Yeah, that's definitely, yeah, that is a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big, a lot of those are really big. I think, like I said, knowing your growth charts, looking at the census documents or website and seeing people moving in, moving out, is important. But I mean, there are a lot of other granular, smaller things that you can get into too, like certain neighborhoods have properties that are older versus properties that are newer. Like I know in LA, there's communities of properties that are from the 1900s, 1901, 1902, and then, the next zip code over, they're all built in the 60s, so that plays a lot to do with it too, because,
Absolutely. Yeah. Like
yeah,
I live in an area where, like I have a friend, his house was built in 1896.
yeah, oh yeah, that's, I know.
Isn't that crazy? And mine was built in 1977, and I'm in
Wow.
an older area. So a home in when people say I'm looking for a newer build, I don't want anything older than 1980.
Yeah.
You kind of laugh because that doesn't sound, but in an area where I live, where there are houses that were built in the 18 and early 1900s,
Yeah.
how areas like where I live, where the houses were built in the 1970s, it's quite appealing, and we're in an area that's growing, but there are more massive apartment communities going up, more so because we're like what happened in California and LA and San Diego 40, 50 years ago is
Mhm.
starting to happen in Asheville, because it's a very cool area. There's a lot to offer here. And so you're seeing the working class being priced out of the housing market, and
Right.
it's more rentals. And what's crazy is people are paying more for a rental than it would cost them for a mortgage,
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
but they
Mhm.
can't qualify for a loan. And so it's a vicious cycle,
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
that's happening
why
a
I'm
lot.
wanting to do the tiny house village. Like how can I be part of the solution of developing affordable housing for people?
Oh yeah, that's great. That's such a need everywhere. I know in LA it's huge. I mean, it's like, one of the reasons why we left LA is that, the population got so bad, and it's like, it's unfortunate the government doesn't have much to do to fix that. And it's really hard. It's a touchy subject, but I've literally, living there, watched people go from living in a house to living in their car, and, just you see that transition because prices are going up, houses are going up, it's like, you're right. And then a lot of cases now, rents are going up higher than mortgages, which is just so weird, to watch
Yeah,
that happen. Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah. It's interesting. Even here, I've only been here 3 years, and when I first moved here, I wanted to take a little time to get to know the area before I bought something. So I found a really nice luxury apartment complex, lived there for a little less than a year because I found my house and it was exactly what I was looking for, like 10 months after moving here. Broke the lease early a little bit, but it gave me a chance to get to know the area. Well, I had a friend visiting me who was considering moving to the area. She lives in Austin. She was considering moving to Asheville. And we went around to a couple apartment complexes that were real similar to the one I had. I have to say, Asheville has built luxury apartment communities, like all the amenities there. It's nice,
yeah,
So we went to one that was really similar. Probably it's these big conglomerate hedge fund kind of companies that are buying them up and developing. Anyway, I could not believe like the price point from when I rented my 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, very nice apartment with some cool, weird amenities, like they'd pick up your trash at your door. There were no dumpsters, there was a trash service, and they had a car wash and all this, and a dog park.
but yeah.
And it was $13.50 a month for everything. Had my own washer and dryer.
My
And
God.
it was a nice sized apartment. That same
Mhm.
apartment now rents for 18 or 1900 a month. Three
Yeah,
years later, it's
that's
gone
quick.
up that much. Yeah,
Mhm. Yep, I see it happening. I look at a
crazy.
lot of markets all over the United States, and it's a lot of markets. They're just they're shooting up, you know. In fact, I got the other day from a friend of mine in LA, you know, people are looking to do like Section 8. They've gone up. I think it's a 1 bedroom, 1 bath voucher is like $2,000, you know, and this is which is higher, you know, than just getting a regular tenant. So you
Yeah.
see that.
And it pays to pay attention to the market, because I had a friend of mine who moved to Las Vegas, and he moved there because the rental market had gone down, and he was able to rent a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house, you know, just him by himself, and live there for a little while to see if he liked it enough to buy a house. And it was really affordable, because where he really wants to be is California again. But there would be no way he could do that in California. No way. He pays for a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house in a nicer area of Las Vegas, Henderson.
Yeah.
He would get maybe a 2 bedroom apartment for that in San Diego.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, it's crazy. So what, you know, if you had advice, I'm gonna let you get back to the elephant challenge. If you know, were standing on a rooftop and you had a captive audience and you could just give them advice based on your experience, what would your advice be?
You know, I've got so much, but I think one of the big ones I would say, that's probably applicable to a lot of people listening today, is to just start. If this is something that you want to do, if you want to get into real estate, don't get caught up in, you know, analysis paralysis, overthinking, you know, just pick a lane and drive in that lane. Just start, because the sooner you get into it, you'll find your niche. It'll take some time, but at the same time, if you start, you're going to get comfortable with it, and then you're going to be able to move on to maybe what it is that you really want to do. You won't know that right away. So I think the biggest advice I would say is just start ASAP, start today.
Awesome. I love it. Good advice. All right. So look, get out there, take action, no excuses to get some results. If you need help, you feel frozen in fear or frustrated that you can't get past wherever it is you are and you feel stuck, or you just are stumbling around in the dark, just reach out to me in the comments. We'll have a free connection call and see if there's something I can do to help. I appreciate you taking the time out of the Elephant Challenge and out of your busy schedule. I know you guys have a lot going on with that closing coming up. Lionel, it's a pleasure. I look forward to talking to you and Alex on our next coaching call next week. Have a great weekend. I hope your little one's okay after her fall. And, you know, thanks so much for taking the time and sharing your experience with us. People need to hear the struggle is real. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. We appreciate everything you've been doing for us.
Yeah, and we'll send you a recording so you can use it if you want to at some point.
Awesome.
All right. Bye, everybody. If you want to join us live, just join our group, The Unstoppable Real Estate Investor. If you or someone you know would be a great candidate for the Friday podcast to spotlight you as a member, it's a great way to get exposure and get more visibility and make connections with people. I've even had one of my clients who was on the top 5% podcast on Wednesdays at noon Eastern actually get a deal because of it. A gal was watching and just said, "Hey, I want to work with that guy," and they put a deal together. So it's you never know what happens. Just getting yourself out there. Another gal that I interviewed last Friday, Nanette Henry, she just wrote this. You never know what's going to happen with these. Wrote this amazing thing about what a breakthrough it was for her just to get on the podcast and talk in public. Like, it really helped her confidence. And so please, if you want to be a guest on this podcast, just reach out to me in the comments down below. Until then, happy holidays, everyone. Christmas is coming up next weekend. I'm so excited. And then New Year's, and then we have a fresh new year. Set your goals, lay out a plan. After the beginning of the year is not when you start to do that. Now is the time to do that. Starting to plan for your next year. Lionel, thank you so much. Give Alex my love, and I hope you guys have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you, Rihanna.
Bye, everybody.